In this video, we're going to talk about an advanced prompt engineering technique called multi-model prompting or fusion technique. And chances are you've probably done this at one point or another. This is ultimately where you work with a variety of different models to work on a single task, and you may be going back and forth with a few of the models. Now, why this is so much more powerful than just working with one single model is often the fact that you can get a more diverse set of opinions or outputs that you can then synthesize to get a higher quality output that you wouldn't have gotten had you worked with one single model. And the reason why I want to use this today is because Google just launched its most comprehensive deep research agent on the same day that OpenAI dropped GPT 5.2, and I haven't had a chance yet to experiment with either of these tools. And so I want to see this as an opportunity to use all these models together, and in particular the deep research feature, to then generate a high quality SEO strategy for 2026 for my YouTube channel and my X account. What I started off by doing was I actually took the two videos that I had and just went to Gemini 3 Pro, provided them. And just because of how well Gemini is integrated into YouTube, I asked it to create an executive summary of my content as it is today. So it has a good understanding of the style of content that I'm creating, the length, the keywords, etc. And then I'm then going to take that input and run it through all of the models with the same prompt. And just to give you an idea of what the prompt is and what I'm trying to get here is I want them to act as a prompt engineer and do specific research on the deep research tool that was released for Gemini 3 in December 2025. And ultimately, I'm asking it to focus on YouTube strategy and content for search engine optimization, generative engine optimization. I want them to focus on the latest insights from YouTube's algorithm as of 2025, look for non-obvious insights, content ideas, distribution strategies, etc. I also want to let them know that I'm going to also be posting this content natively on the X platform as well. And these are some of the goals that I have. And I give them the executive summary of my last two YouTube videos. And then ultimately what I want them to do at the end is we're going to do one round of turns back and forth. So I say, act in a Socratic style, ask me any questions you have to better understand the task, goal, or resolve any ambiguity that you may have. And so I'm going to kick this out to Gemini 3 Pro. I then get my questions to follow up with. I also did this with Grok 4.1 with expert mode turned on. I got the clarifying questions. I also did this with ChatGPT 5.2, got the clarifying questions. And then I actually hit a rate limit when I was doing this on Claude Sonnet 4.5. And so I actually ran this through anti-gravity where I was using Claude Opus 4.5 with thinking turned on. And again, I did the same exercise. Then what I did was I actually answered their questions. And funny enough, I actually got a different set of questions from all of the models. There was some overlap, but it was more just clarity in terms of some of the ambiguity that I may have provided at the onset. But there were some really unique questions some of the models provided that I want to highlight. So what I found that was quite interesting with Gemini is it actually asked me about the potential trade-off between authority versus discovery. So ultimately thinking, do I want to focus in on the topics that I've already been focusing in on? Or am I open to focusing on more viral, broad topics to actually potentially generate more engagement and kind of top of funnel discovery, which I thought was a really unique question. A lot of them asked me questions around benchmarking, about audience. When I look at Grok, it actually asked a lot of really interesting questions about, like, when I say novel insights and strategies, what do I specifically mean by that? And so I tried to provide some clarity around that. And then I eventually answered all of their questions, took their final output, and then now we're going to synthesize all their outputs in Gemini 3 Pro. So going back to this visual here, we've completed stage 1. And now we're at this fusion stage. So in this fusion stage, again, the real goal here is we just want to create a really high quality text prompt that we're going to put into Gemini 3 Pro with deep research on. So right now we're just going to take all the outputs from all 4 of these models, and we're just going to synthesize them into one single text prompt. So that's where I'm going to go again with Gemini 3 Pro. It's just, in my opinion, the leading model as of today. And if you see the actual input that I put in, it's incredibly long as I'm taking the output of all 4 of the models. I'm just going to minimize this, and then we get the final output, which is this well-crafted text prompt. And if you actually look at the initial prompt that I put in, I do explain that below is a variety of frontier LLM model outputs that all approach the same task. You must synthesize the data, analyze it from first principles, don't just blindly assume it's all valuable, and then use any relevant details from all or some of the below content to help you craft your final output. That's going to ultimately be the deep research prompt. I then brought everything over to deep research. And typically what happens is when you put in your initial response, it then provides an outline before it actually kickstarts the research, because it's going to take some time and it goes through hundreds, if not thousands of sources in some cases. And so just as one more final turn, I then took this output, said I wanted to edit this research plan. I brought that back to Claude Opus 4.5 thinking and just did one more round of follow-up iteration. And then I took all of that, put it back in, and then we actually kicked off the deep research. And you can just see this thing is incredible, and it's perfectly optimized for all of the input and nuance of who I am, the content that I'm focusing on, my distribution channels and strategies that I have available to myself. And this thing is just a beast to kind of sift through. And you can see here that research mode is actually very, very in-depth. I love how at the bottom here, it actually outlines the sources used in the report. So you can actually open up and rip through all the different sources that is actually cited. But then it also includes the sources read but not used in the report. And again, the depth of research that this model and this deep research tool is doing is just crazy. And then you can actually see all the thinking through it. So you can go through and actually try to audit, if you really want to, the exact approach that it took. And this is like PhD level quality research. So a bit of a redundant, time-consuming exercise, not cost-effective, not token efficient, but I think it's a fun way to experiment with all the models and get a really high-quality output that I can then use going into 2026 for my own YouTube and X content creation journey.